Greetings, my name is Tim Johnston. This is Recovery, Strength, Hope and Courage. Pain, emotional or physical, trauma, loneliness, abandonment, self-hatred, lack of self-worth, low self-esteem, worthlessness, emptiness, a gap inside that needs filling, a feeling that something's not quite right, that you don't know your purpose or why you're here, searching, discontent with life and not knowing why. All these things classed as pain, really. You can put them all under the heading of pain. And most people that fall into addiction are feeling one of, or if not all, or most of these things. I know I did during the years of my addictions. But for the purpose of talking about the addiction cycle, which I'll just explain to you quickly now, what I believe is the addiction cycle and how to break it, we'll call it pain under one heading of pain. So we feel this pain, whatever this pain may be. So then we look for a substance or an agent. We want to medicate this pain. So the agent can be, we're not just talking about alcohol and drugs here. The agent can be anything, because I believe that most of society today is in pain of some sort and in addiction of some sort. So the agent you could be looking for could be pornography, sex, it could be gambling, it could be food, it could be your mobile phone looking for approval and distraction. It could be the internet, it could be anything at all to distract you and take away this pain. But obviously, in the case of most people that watch these videos, we're talking about alcohol and drugs here. So we self-medicate with this to ease this pain, to distract ourselves and forget about it, to numb this pain. And it's a temporary anesthesia. It only lasts for a short while and distracts us for a short while to fill the void. Of course, when this wears off, we have to face the consequences of what we've done. And those consequences can be many and far-ranging. We not only strip ourselves of everything that we hold dear, mostly our loved ones and those ones around us, our family and our friends, and hurt them, abuse them in many ways. We also do the same things to ourselves. We have to face the consequences of what we've done to ourselves, and we've taken away our dignity and our self-respect, and we may be heading towards the gutter. So what happens then? Of course, we have then the same feelings of pain and self-hatred and disgust and emptiness and loneliness, and come back at the end of this cycle. So we go back to number one at the beginning of the cycle again, which is pain. And we medicate again, and we go round and round and round on this cycle, this never-ending cycle, because we don't deal with the issues that are at the top of it, which is the pain. But first of all, we have to break the cycle, and of course that becomes very difficult, because all these things that we look for comfort and for particularly alcohol and drugs have damaged our bodies and our minds, our brains, and our dopamine receptors and serotonin and endorphins and all that are all damaged, because when we take, for instance, opiates, there's 100 times more dopamine released in a rush of euphoria. That is why we can hide from our feelings and from our pain and from our emotions that we want to hide from. But of course, it never is as good with drugs or alcohol or gambling or sex as it was the first time. We have to seek more of it to get the same effect, and then obviously we become physically addicted to it in the case of alcohol and drugs and many other things, where our bodies become dependent on it. So then it's not just a case of medicating the pain. You're trying to stave off the illness that comes on, the feeling of withdrawal, the pain and suffering of withdrawal, on top of all the pain and suffering and depression that you're causing by hiding from the things in the first place, or the things you're trying to hide from and shelter yourself from and numb yourself from. So it's just a vicious cycle that gets worse and worse and worse and escalates until you're on what I call the hamster wheel. So above all else, first of all, you have to break this cycle, and of course that means that you need to realize that no one's coming to save you in this. No one is coming to save you. And knowledge is power. These are two things you really have to realize. So you have to find out. And what I did was, first of all, realize that no one was coming to save me and that I had to take action. And if this carried on, then it would only result in my death and the hurt and destruction of all those around me and that I love. So I tried to find out as much as I could about from other people, really, from other experts and from the net, from YouTube, from books, from whatever. I had no preconceptions or biases towards anything. I just wanted to find out everyone's opinion and then find out what was best for me, because we're all individuals and we all need to mold our recoveries the best way we can for ourselves. So then that knowledge, the difficulty becomes then is we all know the right things to do. So it's turning what we know into what we do. And that's difficult. It's very difficult, and it takes, as I've said many, many times before, it takes self-discipline, and it takes courage, and it takes commitment, and all those other things. So first of all, you have to realise that once you've got off this cycle, and if you look back at my other videos, and please subscribe if you like these and if they help you at all, but look back at my other videos and how to come off the cycle, actually stop taking the drugs and alcohol and stop doing the things you're doing. But all that becomes absolutely worthless if you don't deal with the roots of the problem, which for the purpose of this is all those things, but we'll call it pain under the umbrella of pain. You have to deal with this pain, and that takes bravery. And there's sort of 4 or 5 things that I would say that you have to do to sort this out, to deal with it. Now, those of you who've had massive traumas in your life, and I said this in my last video, may need to face your fears, start accepting these emotions, but take professional help. I'm not a doctor, and I'm not a psychiatrist. And I'm sure some of the traumas that you've faced are a hell of a lot worse than the ones that I've faced. And some of you may feel that professional help might be the way forward for you. Trying to avoid, if you can, taking medication, but obviously sometimes if you're suffering from, severe bipolar depression, clinical depression, that you may have to take medication. That's up to the doctor to decide that. But be honest with yourselves. Do you really need that? In some cases, yes, you do. But you have to deal with this pain, and sometimes you have to talk that through with a professional person, a counsellor. If it's grief, or if it's sexual or physical abuse that's been part of your childhood, and even sometimes cases of abandonment and all those sort of things need to be talked through with a professional. But at some point you're going to have to deal with this, because you're going to end up back on that cycle. You've broken the cycle by stopping. But the pain you're still feeling, and this is why a lot of people relapse in early recovery, because they're still feeling that pain, that those feelings that they were trying to numb themselves from and avoid are still there, and they've not dealt with them. So you have to start going towards it. Now that's one way of going, facing your fears, starting to accept your emotions, because they're going to come flooding back to you when you stop. Particularly when you stop taking drugs and alcohol, they're going to come flooding back at you, and probably more fiercely than you can ever remember. And you've got to be prepared for that, to deal with that. You're not going to feel like dancing a jig when you first start recovery. And it's a case of patience, because none of us are very patient these days. And we all want a quick fix, which is why a lot of societies are addicted, because they want a quick fix. They want to feel good all of the time and very quickly, and it's just not practical. You have to work at it. You have to work at these things. It's a bit like spiritual weight training, if you like. You have to exercise that, just like you exercise any other muscle. You have to exercise your brain like you have to exercise any other muscle, and it has to heal. So these things don't happen overnight. So please don't expect them to. Even 6 months in, people talk about this thing called pause. I'm not a massive believer in pause, I have to say, but each to their own. It may well exist, but I just believe it's, if you're consistently working at this, then your body will heal. And it's a long, slow process, because the damage is done to your brain and your body. It's massive. It's like anything. It's like any cut, or it has to heal. It has to heal. Any injury has to heal, and your body, it's a slow, long process, and you have to be doing the right things to make it heal. If you're constantly putting dirt into a wound, it's going to keep opening up and going septic. So you have to keep putting the right things and making good choices. Self-worth is a massive thing. I hear, I'll never get my self-worth back. I hear this loads in the groups I'm in. I'll never get my self-worth back. The quickest, and again, if you've been told all your life that you're worthless by your family, by your people that know you, that you're ugly, that you're not a nice person, and you'll never amount to anything, you're worthless and you're useless, and you'll never achieve anything in your life. You're told the same thing at school by your teachers, and etc., etc., etc. Of course, it's a program in your head that you've got to reverse. It's like any habit. It's like any program. You have to deprogram it. You have to delete it from your system, if you like, and you have to start rebuilding your self-esteem and self-worth. And the quickest way to rebuild your self-worth, I've found, because I had very much self-hatred and I couldn't even look into a mirror, I have to say, because I hated myself so much. And I thought it was impossible 15 months ago to start loving myself and feeling some self-worth and self-esteem. And I'm telling you, the quickest way to do it is by serving others, serving the world, serving those around you. And that doesn't, it can mean volunteering, but it can just mean being kind to people and kind to your neighbours and being helpful and helping people out, whether it's on, groups in forums or in AA or in Smart Recovery, other addicts, or whether it's just helping an old lady across the street. I mean, I'm just using small examples here. Or it may be going and feeding the homeless 7 days a week, whatever, or helping people that are sick. But putting things back and serving others is what we are here for. If you're wondering what you're here for, that's what you're here for. That's my belief, and that will increase yourself. You'll suddenly think, well, I'm not too bad a person. I'm not, I'm not such a twat after all. And it's a slow process. It doesn't happen overnight, but it will happen. It will come back, your self-worth. You have to tame your mind. This is another one that you look at. Tame your mind, because your mind's your biggest enemy. It can be your biggest enemy, but it can also be your greatest friend. So taming your mind, realizing the 5-second rule counts, and that's because doing things that you realize that, self-discipline. The things that are good for you are going to be uncomfortable generally. Generally the things that are uncomfortable and you don't want to face are the things that you need to do. So your mind will always try and sort you out of doing them. But you've got to be strong and show this self-discipline and tame your mind. And you can do this. You can build your mind's like any other muscle, like I say. And that can be meditation. It can be all sorts of things, linguistic programming, all sorts of stuff. It can be go and see a professional, whatever you want to do. But what I've done is I've chose to do it myself, and I used the Wim Hof method, which I've talked about in my other videos. I've used breathing techniques, meditation. I've used diet. I've used exercise. All these things, yoga. But it's up to you what you use. But you have to tame your mind. You have to be, you have to master your emotions, and you have to become the master of your own mind. Illuminate your shadow. That's another one. Illuminate your shadow. And what I mean by that is work towards being the best version of you can be, the most authentic version of you can be. And that's what we're all heading to be, really. If you want a purpose in life, that's what it should be. Because then you can be the best person for your children, for your spouse, for your family, for your friends, for those people around you that you suddenly are attracting because they didn't want to know you in the past. New friends and new acquaintances and people, because they feel the aura coming off you of positivity and kindness and helpfulness. Because it's just about being kind and helpful. And working towards being mentally, physically and spiritually the best person you can be. And it's a grandiose sort of thing, and it's a slow process, and it doesn't happen overnight. But be patient, because these things take time. Energizing your body and mind is the final one I'll say now. Energizing your body and mind, and that can be via meditation, but predominantly diet and exercise. Again, I will say this time and time and time again: you get out what you put in, and it'll help your healing. And you won't need antidepressants, and you won't be feeling a lot of the negative emotions that you're feeling eventually if your diet and exercise is right. You won't. It's the best healer of all, I think, personally. But, amongst these other things. But dealing with this initial pain, very, very important. And your initial traumas and your initial problems. Trusting the process of your life. And you have to trust, and live your life with the courage that all that happens is for a higher purpose, which I believe it is. It's for a higher purpose. So finally, I just want to say that, a couple of things. People talk about finding themselves, and I would never say that I've found myself, but I'm starting to recreate myself. I don't think you find yourself, you create yourself, you recreate yourself. And generally that takes self-discipline and commitment. You have to say it takes self-discipline. And before you switch off, I just want to say something about commitment. There's a good analogy which I'll use, the difference between ham and eggs. And the difference between ham and eggs is the chicken is involved, but the pig is committed. And work that one out for yourselves. And that's what it takes, because it is a matter of life and death. This is a matter of life and death. Because if you carry on that cycle of addiction, you will die and you will lose everything. There is no question about that, because it will. Because I was nearly there 15 months ago. I nearly died, and I'd almost lost everything. But it's all coming back. It's all coming back. I'm not talking about health in mind, body, and spirit, but I'm talking about everything. My family, friends, everything, and love and happiness coming back into my life that I never thought would be there again. And self-esteem and self-worth. I can look at myself in the mirror now, directly in the eyes. And don't forget, if you're saying you're umming and ahhing about doing this, it's great to have intent, because intent reveals desire. Intent reveals desire that you want to do this, because you're looking at these videos. But the only thing that reveals commitment is action. Action reveals commitment, and that's what it takes: action, self-discipline, commitment, and consistency. Anyway, that's enough from me. Break the cycle of addiction today. Seize the day. Seize it with both hands, with every ounce of your being, because every moment of your precious consciousness, of consciousness is precious. And if you're really struggling, because it is hard in early recovery and withdrawal and all the rest of it, just hold on, because every day gets better. Every day will get better. Anyway, that's all from me. Break that cycle today. Much love to you. Bye-bye.